I got my best friend a job at my company. I trusted him, supported him, considered him a brother. And he, in gratitude, stole my idea, turned me into management, and got a promotion at my expense. He thought he had outplayed me. But his mistake cost him everything. The first time I met Ben Calloway was in 3rd grade. He was the new kid, lanky, with oversized glasses and a mop of unruly brown hair. During recess, I found him sitting alone, methodically taking apart and reassembling a small electronic toy his father had given him. I watched, fascinated, as his nimble fingers worked with precision unusual for an 8-year-old. "How do you know how to put it back together?" I asked. He looked up, startled by my presence, then shrugged. "I just remember where everything goes." That was Ben, naturally gifted, with an innate understanding of how things worked. And that was the beginning of our friendship, one that would span 2 decades and ultimately end in betrayal so profound it would alter both our lives forever. Throughout school, we were inseparable. We built computers from scavenged parts, coded simple games, and dreamed of changing the world through technology. While other kids played sports or chased popularity, Ben and I spent countless nights in my parents' garage, illuminated by the blue glow of monitors, talking about the future we'd build together. "We'll start our own company someday," Ben would say, eyes bright with ambition. "Callaway Reynolds Tech. It'll be bigger than Microsoft." I believed him. I believed in us. We attended the same college, both majoring in computer science. I was methodical, detail-oriented. Ben was brilliant but erratic. His code was elegant but often incomplete, flashes of genius without the patience to refine. I was his counterbalance, the one who could translate his vision into functional reality. After graduation, opportunity knocked, for me. Nexus Technologies, one of the largest software development companies in the country, offered me a position as a junior developer. Ben, despite his natural talent, had struggled with the structured environment of college and graduated with a less impressive resume. "It's fine," he assured me when I called to tell him the news, his voice tight with forced enthusiasm. "You deserve it, Alex. We can't all be superstars." For the first time, I felt a wedge between us, subtle, but present. I promised myself I'd help him find his way. 3 years passed. I climbed steadily at Nexus while Ben bounced between startups that failed and freelance work that barely paid his rent. We still talked regularly, but our lives were diverging. Then came the call that would change everything. "Alex, I need help," Ben's voice was hollow, defeated. "I've been evicted. I'm sleeping on Jordan's couch, but I can't stay here much longer." Without hesitation, I offered him my spare bedroom. "Stay as long as you need. And listen, there's an opening in my department. I can put in a good word. You do that for me?" The relief in his voice was palpable. "Of course. That's what friends are for." 2 weeks later, Benjamin Calloway joined Nexus Technologies as a junior developer, directly under my supervision. My boss, Director of Development Catherine Chen, had been skeptical but trusted my judgment. "He's rough around the edges," I told her, "but he's the most innovative thinker I know." For the first few months, everything was perfect. Ben worked hard, brought fresh ideas to the team, and seemed genuinely grateful for the opportunity. We fell back into our old rhythm, coding during the day, brainstorming at night. It felt like college again, like we were back on the same path. "I don't know how to thank you," Ben said one evening as we shared beers on my balcony, the city lights spread out below us like a circuit board. "You saved me, Alex." I clapped him on the shoulder. "Just keep crushing it at work. That's thanks enough." If only I'd known those words would come back to haunt me. 6 months into Ben's employment, I was assigned lead developer on a new project, an AI-driven system optimization tool that could revolutionize how Nexus managed its vast server infrastructure. The potential was enormous, millions in saved operational costs, improved performance across all platforms, and possibly a new revenue stream if we licensed the technology to other companies. I assembled a small team, with Ben as my second-in-command. We worked tirelessly, often staying long after everyone else had gone home. The project became my obsession, my chance to make a real mark on the company and the industry. And Ben was there every step of the way, asking questions, offering suggestions, learning my methodology. I was proud of how far he'd come, no longer the brilliant but undisciplined coder from college, but a polished professional who could actually follow through. "I could never have built something like this without you showing me the way," he told me one night, eyes fixed on the lines of code scrolling across my monitor. "You've always been the better engineer. I should have seen the signs." The way he'd linger in my office, studying my notes when I stepped away. How he'd ask increasingly specific questions about the project's architecture and implementation details. His sudden interest in meeting with other department heads without me. But I trusted him. He was more than a colleague, he was family. 8 months into development, with a working prototype nearing completion, everything changed. My morning began like any other: coffee, email check, code review. Then my phone rang. "Alex, Catherine wants to see you." Right away. It was her assistant, voice unusually tight. When I entered the director's office, the atmosphere hit me like a physical force. Catherine sat behind her desk, expression carefully neutral. Beside her stood Marcus Weber, the company's VP of Innovation. And there, inexplicably, was Ben, standing not like someone who'd been summoned, but like someone who belonged in that room more than I did. "Have a seat, Alex," Catherine said, gesturing to the chair in front of her desk. I remained standing. "What's going on?" Catherine exchanged a glance with Weber before continuing. "We've been reviewing the optimization project. And..." My stomach tightened. "And we've decided to make some adjustments to the team structure." I looked at Ben, who was studying the floor with sudden interest. "Ben has presented us with a revised approach to the project," Weber interjected, his tone businesslike. "One that incorporates machine learning in a way your current model doesn't. The potential efficiency gains are substantial." "What are you talking about?" "Ben and I have been working on this together. Any ideas he has were developed as part of my team." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "Alex, we understand your frustration, but the direction Ben has proposed represents a significant improvement over the current prototype. Given the project's importance, we need to pursue the most promising path." "And that means..." I already knew the answer, could feel it spreading through my chest like ice. "We're restructuring the project leadership. Ben will take over as lead developer, reporting directly to me," Weber said. "You'll transition to a supporting role, focusing on the back-end integration." The room seemed to tilt. "You're taking my project. The one I conceived, pitched, and have been leading for almost a year. It's not personal, Alex. It's what's best for the company." Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. I turned to Ben, who finally met my gaze. There was no remorse there, no shame, only a cool assessment, as if calculating my next move. "Did you know about this before today?" I asked him. He hesitated, then nodded. "I've been discussing it with Marcus for a couple of weeks." 2 weeks. While we'd been working side by side, while I'd been treating him like a brother, he'd been plotting to take everything from me. "I see." My voice sounded distant, as if coming from someone else. "You'll still receive credit for the initial concept," Weber added, as if that made everything acceptable. "And your role remains crucial to the project's success." I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. I simply turned and walked out, each step carefully measured to hide the trembling in my legs. In the hallway, I heard footsteps behind me. Ben caught up as I reached my office. "Alex, wait. We need to talk about this." I entered my office and he followed, closing the door behind him. For a moment, I just stared at him, this person I'd known most of my life, who now seemed like a complete stranger. Talk about what? How you stole my work. How you went behind my back. I didn't steal anything, he said, expression hardening. I improved it. Your approach was solid but conventional. My modifications make it revolutionary. Your modifications? You wouldn't even understand the underlying architecture if I hadn't walked you through it step by step. Ben's posture changed, shoulders squaring as if preparing for confrontation. Look, I'm sorry if you feel betrayed, but this is how the real world works. You've been at Nexus long enough to know that. This isn't about the real world. This is about loyalty. About basic human decency. He sighed, rubbing his temple as if I were a child having a tantrum. It's business, Alex. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. I repeated, incredulous. I got you this job. I let you live in my home when you had nowhere else to go. And I'm grateful for that, truly. His tone suggested anything but gratitude. But we can't let personal relationships interfere with professional advancement. The company needs the best possible version of this project. And you decided that was yours. Without even discussing it with me first. Would you have supported my approach if I had? We both knew the answer. Not because his ideas weren't valid, but because the way he'd gone about it, secretly developing his own version using my foundational work, then presenting it to leadership as if it were entirely his creation, violated every principle of collaboration and trust. Get out of my office, I said quietly. Alex. Get out. He hesitated, then shrugged. We're still on the same team, you know. Just with different roles now. I hope you can be professional about this. As he reached for the door handle, he paused. By the way, I'll be moving out this weekend. Seems like the right time for some space. After he left, I sat motionless, staring at nothing. The project I'd poured my soul into for months had been taken from me. The friend I'd trusted with everything had betrayed me. And now I was expected to continue working on the very thing that had been stolen, supporting the thief who took it. That night, lying awake in my apartment, the same apartment where Ben had been living, where we'd spent countless hours working on my project, I made a decision. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Ben had made a critical miscalculation. He thought he knew the system better than I did. He thought he could simply step into my role and succeed where I had laid the groundwork. But there was one thing Ben had always lacked: patience. The willingness to think beyond the first brilliant solution to find the perfect one. And patience would be my weapon now. The next morning, I arrived at work early, calm, composed, professional. I congratulated Ben on his promotion in front of our team, wished him success with his vision. The surprise on his face was worth the bitter taste the words left in my mouth. Thank you, Alex, he said, clearly unsure how to respond to my apparent acceptance. I'm looking forward to continuing our collaboration. I smiled and nodded, the perfect picture of a gracious colleague. No one needed to know that I'd spent half the night accessing backup servers, documenting every line of original code I'd written, every design document I'd created before Ben ever joined the project. For the next 2 weeks, I played my role perfectly. The supportive team member, the experienced developer willing to share insights with the new project lead. Ben began to relax, believing he'd successfully navigated what could have been an awkward transition. What he didn't realize was that I was studying him more carefully than he'd ever studied my code. I observed his new habits as project lead, the corners he cut, the details he overlooked, the responsibilities he neglected. Most importantly, I noticed his increasing comfort with taking credit for work he hadn't done. Meanwhile, I cultivated relationships throughout the company. Casual conversations with the security team, friendly lunches with legal, after-work drinks with marketing. I became everyone's confidant, the reliable veteran always willing to offer advice or assistance. Information flowed to me from all directions, including details of Ben's private meetings with upper management. I learned that he was promising impossible timelines to impress Weber. That he was exaggerating the project's capabilities in ways that could create serious legal exposure if customers relied on those claims. That he was already angling for a director-level position once the project launched. And I waited. 3 months after Ben's promotion, opportunity presented itself. Nexus was hosting its annual Innovation Summit, where the company's most promising projects were showcased to investors, partners, and the media. The optimization tool, now rebranded as Nexus Optimize, was the centerpiece of this year's event. Ben would present the nearly completed product to an audience of industry leaders, including the company's founder and CEO. 2 days before the summit, I requested access to the project's core modules to finalize back-end integration. Ben approved without question. He was too busy preparing his presentation to scrutinize my motives. That night, I made subtle modifications to my original code. Not enough to cause permanent damage or put the company at risk, but enough to ensure that under the specific conditions of a live demonstration, with multiple simultaneous processes and external connections, the system would struggle, revealing flaws in Ben's implementation that he had never bothered to address. The day of the summit arrived. The auditorium was packed with over 300 attendees, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. I sat in the front row, directly in Ben's line of sight, supportive colleague to the end. He took the stage with confidence, launching into a polished presentation about the revolutionary technology he had developed. On the massive screen behind him, the interface of Nexus Optimize gleamed with promise. What sets our solution apart from anything currently on the market is its adaptive intelligence, Ben explained, voice carrying clearly through the hall. Nexus Optimize doesn't just manage system resources, it predicts needs and allocates accordingly, all in real time. He moved to the demonstration portion, fingers flying across the keyboard as he initiated the program. Let me show you how it handles a typical enterprise environment. The simulation began smoothly. Graphs showed resource allocation adjusting automatically as virtual traffic increased. Ben smiled, in his element as he narrated the process. Now, let's introduce some chaos. He triggered a simulated spike in demand, the exact scenario I'd prepared for. The system hesitated, graphs flickering. A warning message appeared in the corner of the screen. Ben continued speaking, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. This momentary adjustment is normal as the system recalibrates. Another warning flashed, then another. The primary display began to show cascading errors, not catastrophic, but impossible to ignore or explain away. There seems to be an unexpected issue with the demonstration environment, Ben said, voice tight as he tried to regain control. He typed rapidly, attempting to override the errors, but each fix triggered new problems. From the second row, Marcus Weber leaned forward, expression darkening as the promised revolutionary technology faltered before the company's most important audience. I stood up, approaching the stage with measured steps. May I? I asked quietly, gesturing to the keyboard. Ben hesitated, trapped between pride and panic, then stepped aside. I connected my laptop to the presentation system and pulled up a terminal window. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing is a classic example of implementation drift, I explained calmly, typing commands as I spoke. When complex systems are modified without full understanding of their foundational architecture, seemingly minor changes can create significant instabilities. I executed a series of commands, systematically addressing each error. The audience watched in silence as the system gradually stabilized. There we go, I said, turning to face the crowd. The core functionality remains sound, but the current implementation has deviated from the original design parameters in ways that compromise stability. Weber stood up. Alex, are you saying you can fix these issues? Of course, I replied. I designed the original system architecture. All eyes turned to Ben, who stood frozen at the edge of the stage. Ben, Weber's voice was dangerously quiet. Didn't you say this was your development? It is, Ben stammered. Alex helped with early conceptualization, but the current implementation is mine. I pulled up a new window on the screen, a side-by-side comparison of my original code and Ben's modified version. The system's core functionality, I said, highlighting key sections, remains virtually identical to the architecture I developed 8 months ago. The changes that have been implemented since then actually reduce stability rather than enhancing it. The room was completely silent now. I could feel Ben's eyes boring into me, but I didn't turn. Furthermore, I continued, I have documentation showing the complete development history, including all original specifications and implementations that predate Mr. Calloway's involvement with the project. Catherine Chen had joined Weber now, both of them looking between Ben and me with dawning understanding. I can have the system fully operational within 48 hours, I told them. Using the original architecture with appropriate optimizations that won't compromise stability. Do it, Weber said without hesitation. As I disconnected my laptop, Ben finally found his voice. This is sabotage, he hissed. You did something to the code. I looked him directly in the eyes. I simply revealed what was already there, I replied quietly. Your own shortcuts did the rest. The aftermath was swift and decisive. An emergency meeting was called immediately following the summit. Ben's access to all company systems was suspended pending investigation. By the end of the day, security was escorting him from the building, his personal items packed in a cardboard box. I was reinstated as project lead with a substantial raise and reporting directly to Weber. Within a week, I had Nexus Optimize running flawlessly. The few partners and investors who had witnessed the summit failure were invited for a private redemonstration, and their confidence was fully restored. Ben tried to find other employment in our industry, but word travels fast in tech circles. His reputation was irreparably damaged, not just for failing technically, but for the perceived ethical breach of claiming credit for another's work. No reputable company would touch him. 3 months later, I heard he'd moved back to his hometown, working at his uncle's insurance agency. His brilliant mind, his potential, his dreams, all squandered because he couldn't see beyond his ambition to the consequences of betrayal. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I went too far. If there could have been another way to reclaim what was mine without destroying him completely. But then I remember his words in my office that day, it's business, Alex. Nothing personal. He was right about one thing. In business, as in life, every action has consequences. Ben calculated his risk and made his choice. He just didn't factor in the true cost of betrayal, not just to our friendship, but to everything he hoped to achieve. As for me, I still have the same office, the same view of the city skyline. But something has changed. The trust one once gave freely is now a resource I guard carefully. Success tastes different when it's built on the ruins of a friendship once thought unbreakable. Yet I can't deny a certain clarity that came with Ben's betrayal. In the harsh light of that experience, I discovered my own capacity for calculated patience, for strategic thinking beyond anything I'd imagined myself capable of. Nexus Optimize launched to market 6 months later and became the company's most successful new product in a decade. I received a director-level promotion and a substantial equity package. On paper, I have everything I once dreamed of. Except the person I once thought would be celebrating beside me. Business, after all, is business. And betrayal, as Ben learned too late, costs everything.